For years now, the smartwatch market has not really been kind to Android users. The Apple Watch only really works with the iPhones. Fitness watches are usually great for health, but maybe not so great at being an outright smartwatch. And for Google's Wear OS, it's been pretty stagnant for years. Samsung's Tizen platform and Galaxy Watch lineup was probably one of the few saving graces, but that even had its own complications if you weren't using a Galaxy smartphone too. Now though, Samsung has moved from Tizen to Google's revamped Wear OS 3 with the Galaxy Watch 4, and now we think we're finally getting somewhere. Thanks for watching 9 to 5 Google here on YouTube. Remember to thumbs up, hit subscribe, and then tap the bell icon to be among the first to watch our upcoming videos. Let's start with the hardware, as the new Galaxy Watch 4 series is pretty standard for a high-end smartwatch, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Samsung has developed a tried and true design in its Galaxy Watch 4 Classic, with its circular design and rotating bezel around the display. Meanwhile, the standard Galaxy Watch 4 is more sleek and sporty, with its flat metal chassis and slim lugs for that band connection. With the standard Galaxy Watch 4, there's no question you're buying something that looks like a smartwatch. The flat display, 2 buttons, and just the overall aesthetic do scream smartwatch from the outset. I do appreciate this design, and it's the one that I've probably going to be spending the most time with, and I am considering picking one of these up for myself, whereas some of my team members have already done so already, which is testament to that hardware. Meanwhile, the Galaxy Watch 4 Classic does a better job of blending in as a traditional timepiece in a sea of smartwatches. The wider chassis makes room for the rotating bezel, and its knurled texture and satisfying click on each turn and twist is also a nice addition. On the inside of that bezel are markers for the hours and minutes, as you see as on a traditional analog watch, and it just completes that overall look. Obviously competing with that is the always on display, which Samsung does turn on by default, but it is certainly available to complete that traditional watch look, and the feature works well with Samsung's various watch faces and the many that you can download through the Google Play Store. Notably, it seems to support full colour in these always on display modes too, which is something we don't often see from a lot of smartwatches already littering the market. The display itself is on both watches is of very good quality, with a small AMOLED display, which is Samsung's bread and butter, stuffed into a circular body. The display has enough range to not blind you late at night, but just enough brightness to be easily readable in all but the most direct sunlight. The bezels on both watches aren't overly large, and we must admit it's pretty impressive given that the bezels on a standard Watch 4 are nice and responsive to touch, and even for sliding through content on those displays, as kind of with that virtual rotating bezel feature. It's also a pretty solid addition. It's still not quite muscle memory for most of us, but that's what makes the Galaxy Watch 4 a better overall experience in terms of sheer fluidity, thanks to that physical rotating bezel. Sitting on the wrist, the Galaxy Watch 4 and Watch 4 Classic do fit comfortably like any smartwatch. It's not though a one-size-fits-all solution, so if you're able to, we would suggest checking these out in various sizes just to see the one that kind of suits you best and fits on your wrist best. The rubber style sports band that ships with the standard Galaxy Watch 4 is definitely the more comfortable of the duo, and it seems to hold up relatively well to use and abuse. It is a little thick though, and meanwhile that rubber strap that does ship with the Galaxy Watch 4 Classic is considerably worse in our opinion. Our own team member Ben actually swapped his strap out for a different leather option, but we both stuck with the rubber band on the Galaxy Watch 4 because it's just much more comfortable. We've also got to applaud Samsung for sticking with a traditional quick release pin for the bands rather than using a proprietary connection. The downside here though is that some bands just may not fit due to some of the chassis tweaks on the newer models compared to the older ones. So the biggest story surrounding the Galaxy Watch 4 isn't even the hardware or its new fitness chops, but rather the software that makes it all tick. After several generations running its Tizen platform, Samsung has switched to Wear OS and built up a reboot of the platform with Google's help. It's a big deal for everyone involved, but on Samsung's hardware, the look of Wear OS 3 is quite different. The One UI watch is a skin basically on top of Wear OS 3, and it's very reminiscent of two things. First and foremost, of the Tizen operating system that ran on the company's older smartwatches, and if you've handed someone one of these new devices, they wouldn't even probably know that it was running Wear OS at all if it weren't for the Play Store's presence here. If you were hoping that Samsung's adoption of Wear OS also meant that the smartwatch would be taken over by Google services, then unfortunately you're in for a rude awakening. Google software entirely fades into the background on a One UI watch, with only the Play Store and Google Maps being pre-installed. Everything else is powered by Samsung for better or worse. There are a few places though where Samsung even takes over a lot in areas such as fitness and tracking, for example. In others, we do wish Samsung didn't actually stifle what the user wants to do. Google Pay, for instance, can be used, but it can't get a useful hardware shortcut, as Samsung Pay is actually hard-coded onto that option with no workarounds. One UI Watch also carries over some of the benefits from Samsung's smartphone skin though. There is virtually no perfect way to handle a settings menu on a smartwatch, but Samsung does make a strong case for its looking for this section at the bottom of each menu page to make finding certain common settings much more easy. The deeper integration with Wear OS with Android also pushes One UI Watch to talk even better to One UI on Samsung phones. It all comes down to these little things, such as syncing bedtime mode between your phone and your watch, and more on top. What's unfortunate though is that Samsung's take on Wear OS depends heavily on your smartphone preferences. If you're using a Samsung smartphone, you'll feel right at home on this smartwatch. If not, you'll likely feel frustrated from time to time because the experience is clearly shoehorned in for other Android phones out there. Now, Google and Samsung have partnered up to build Wear OS 3 using their respective skills, but early impressions made it pretty clear Samsung was the one really benefiting most in the short term. But a few weeks after this device launched and we've been using them, we've kind of come to another conclusion, that the real winner here is probably going to be you, the buyer. You're probably wondering how so. Well, Wear OS brings a strength to Samsung's watches that Tizen couldn't really deliver, and that is choice, which is mainly focused on apps and integration in this case. By the way of an expanded app catalogue on Wear OS, Samsung smartwatch owners have flexibility that was nothing more than a dream when these products ran Tizen. You can switch out keyboards or try out the Google Assistant, manage multiple music apps, and then the Play Store opens up yet more options for apps and watch faces. You can even go as far as using Google Fit and Samsung Health side by side if you want. The point is, you get to pick how and when you use your watch instead of getting stuck into using it exactly the way Samsung tells you to. Samsung's Tizen platform though has had some software annoyances of its own, and Google's Wear OS has had some long-standing bugs and issues. So it probably comes as no surprise that pushing these two together has resulted in a lot of those bugs kinda sticking around where they probably shouldn't. On our retail units, not review units, we've even noticed some weird notification issues. Even though notifications are syncing and vibrating on the watch, they sometimes don't show up in the notification history consistently. It can usually be fixed with a reboot or two, though it can, on top of that, just return to the watch for no discernible reason, which therefore means more device resets. This quirk isn't the only problem the new Wear OS has on the Galaxy Watch 4, but it does provide a good insight into what to expect. We've yet to face a single bug that truly breaks experience or usefulness, but bugs almost feel par for the course, at least until Samsung and Google can push Wear OS updates and Samsung updates respectively to resolve them. That said, I wouldn't go in maybe expecting a perfect experience, but it is pretty darn good. Perhaps the biggest problem that Samsung does solve for Wear OS though is in the fitness stakes. While Google Fit handles the basics fairly well, it is an incredibly limited app compared to some out there, and it still can't even track sleep cycles. Samsung's excellent health app has been ported over and it includes virtually all of the same features and some newly added ones too, and Samsung's suite can feel a little bit messy at times, but there's no denying that it does get the job done. Samsung Health can reliably track steps, heart rate, sleep, workouts and all other core bits of data, and the watch will even track your workouts automatically after 10 minutes of activity, and this is useful when doing some miscellaneous workouts that you maybe wouldn't know how to categorize. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work for things like popular activities like cycling, where rides tracked automatically on older Galaxy Watch models. For some reason with this reboot, they don't. Samsung also offers the ability to track things like your calorie intake, hydration, blood sugar, blood oxygen, stress, and even menstruation cycles. The watch and the app can track blood pressure and even use an ECG, but only the latter is available in the United States, and it further requires a Samsung phone with a separate app to access. The Galaxy Watch 4 also debuts a new body composition feature that uses electrical signals to determine your body fat percentage and other bits of data such as your skeletal muscle makeup. While we can't personally speak to the exact accuracy of this feature, the data is presented in our tests seem roughly in line with what we expected, as much as we may dislike the results, although David Kogan, aka The Unlocker, did take a Watch 4 to a clinic with a proper body composition machine to test the results side by side, and it seems they were very accurate in that example, only off by a percentage point or two, and with any smartwatch based health data, this feature should only be used to observe trends, as it will never be as accurate as a professional medical device. But that said, it's still a nice extra data that wouldn't otherwise be available on some of the watches out there. Of course, the results of all of this data we've seen from the Galaxy Watch 4 have been rather good and in line with some other devices out there, but Samsung Health feels like the only place to store your data and to keep track of workouts and such like. Alternatives like the Fitbit app seem much better as well at encouraging you to improve and work towards goals, whereas Samsung just doesn't, or at least it doesn't do it as effectively. As for battery life, we all know Samsung watches have generally speaking that is, have pretty decent battery life on the whole, and Wear OS watches, well, on the other hand, they've not been quite as good. We have to say with the larger 44mm Galaxy Watch 4 and 46mm Galaxy Watch 4 Classic, the battery life is going to be probably enough for most people out there. Slap it on at 100% in the morning, and you'll probably easily get through a full day regardless of your usage. But it is tough to say if it can reliably last 2 days on a charge under anything past moderate usage. Workouts that use GPS though especially take a toll on that battery lifespan, as you'd kind of expect. The 40mm Watch 4 though does struggle on busy days, but it can make it through a day as long as the always on display is not active. It appears to add some serious drain in our experience, and that said though, most people will be fine if they are less active, but we'd say charging little and often is the best way to tackle any battery anxiety, as the difference between both models can be quite stark at times. It's just a shame though that the charging speed is so slow, but at least you can use a wireless charger, which means reverse wireless charging with a Samsung device or any other device for that matter is a nice bonus here. In some ways, the Galaxy Watch 4 isn't probably best thought of as a traditional Wear OS watch. It is, from the hardware to the software, a Samsung smartwatch, though I wouldn't say that's necessarily a bad thing. Samsung does sell the most Android phones of anyone, and their customers will be served greatly by this watch. In fact, they'll be served better than ever, as this watch enables more choice in their experience and opens the door to many more apps, but it doesn't change the fact that this is still a smartwatch tailor-made for Samsung Galaxy users, not really the rest of the Android population. Wear OS has allowed Samsung to make a better smartwatch overall, but Samsung really hasn't returned the favour, meaning that Google has still some more work to do to fully satisfy those that aren't using Samsung phones. That said though, even if you're wanting a Wear OS smartwatch at this point in time, at least until new chips arrive, then these are the only two Wear OS watches we think you should consider. So that's the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4 and Galaxy Watch 4 Classic. Two pretty solid smartwatches overall, and definitely the only two choices an Android user should be looking at if they want a companion smartwatch. We want to know though what you think of this duo. Let us know down in the comment sections below if you've been using either of the new Galaxy watches. But as always, I hope you enjoyed this. This is Damien with 9to5Google saying thanks for watching, and I will speak to you later.